everyone. You're listening to Lazy Gal, hosted by Sejal Ganate. So, this podcast episode is really what I've been doing in my own life, and I hope that it will benefit you. Recently, because especially with school starting and being around a lot more people, setting boundaries has been crucial. It's been really important for me. And one of my biggest personal mantras or kind of like morals is that if it makes me unhappy for a really long period of time, I need to try my best to change it. And I don't allow external things to affect my energy any more than it should. And that's hard, especially if you grew up your whole life wanting to please others and kind of receive their validation. And it's hard if, at the end of the day, you don't put yourself first because so many other things seemed like they needed attention first, even though in the long run they weren't at all important as you. So that's really something that you need to go over with yourself because no one can set boundaries other than you. No one knows what's hurting your energy as much as you. And I talked about this in my first episode on how to protect your peace. And that episode was more of a vague thing. It talked a little bit about setting your boundaries, but this will be going a lot more in depth about a specific aspect. And I'm actually re-recording this episode just because the first one didn't really come out the way I wanted it to. And I think I might have to do this episode in two parts, just because I really want to talk about a lot of things. And I feel like maybe two parts will really kind of put in a short episode, but also let me go into it more in depth. Depth, not depth. That's something else. So, personal boundaries are the limits and rules we set for ourselves within relationships. And if you don't exactly know what boundaries you need to set, I'll be going over the general areas. So, okay, I'm back. Sorry. So I had to change the light because I'm doing a video podcast for the first time, and if you're watching this on YouTube or on Spotify video, I was really orange, but now I'm not. Now I'm not orange. Okay, back to topic. So, I'm going to be talking about the general areas that we need to set relationships with. And the first one is relationships with others. So when we often think of boundaries, we think about boundaries with our friends and just people in our lives. And of course, it's a very important boundary that we need to consider. No matter what we believe, other people have an impact and influence us on some level. And our friends' opinions share us because we care about their opinions because they're our friends, and you usually care about your friends and you care about what they think because they're your friends. And even if you don't like it, society's opinion really does often have a voice in our head, even if you try really hard. And of course, it gets better. Of course, you can work on getting that voice a bit out of your head. But especially if you're starting and you really don't know what boundaries you want to set, society often tells you things that are not true, and you often believe it. So I just want to talk about that kind of aspect about setting boundaries as well. And you kind of need to set boundaries with others by thinking about people in our lives that influence us. Really think about it and be self-aware. Because if you're not self-aware, you cannot set boundaries. That's just how it is. So, family, friends, co-workers, classmates, which of these people have the most influence on your life? Who is negatively and positively impacting you? What can you do so that your life is better? I'll give a few examples if you're having trouble thinking of answers to these. So, first off, you have a friend who you like, but you always don't really feel the best after hanging out. You kind of feel drained sometimes, and you just really want to go home. But this friend always wants to hang out, and you never know when to stop. What can you do? So, what exactly is irritating you? And think about it, journal about it, write it down. What is irritating you about this person? Do they always say things that you disagree with? Do they always say things that you find cringy or something that you don't really, a personality that you don't see yourself kind of being with all the time? Or just because you're on one-on-one and you're just really tired and this person is just so energetic and it's not giving you energy, it's actually kind of taking yours because you also have to pretend like you're at the same level of energy. What is it that is kind of irritating you? And kind of draft a text or kind of find a way in the conversation to don't if it's something that they can't change, it's not something that you should really bring up. It is something that you should maybe distance yourself from. Or if they ask, be hey, I'm just going through something where I'm kind of just not very full of energy and I just don't have it in me to hang out. And if they were a friend, they would understand, oh, this person is just low on their energy. They just don't want to hang out. And that's common, that's normal. You just don't have it in yourself to be around other people, and that's completely normal. You need to respect that about yourself, and other people need to respect that about you. And nothing will change if you don't do it yourself. If you don't reach out and communicate, nothing will go your way if you don't put effort in. Ask a friend or family member to help you approach this problem if you're really doubting yourself. And find people who you trust. Don't be telling other people about your business and your friend's business when you aren't that close to them. Even if you were friends, you need like really close people to talk about other friends with, because one of my number one rules is that one of my close friends talks shit about their close friends, they're 100% talking shit about me. That's just how it is. It's different if they're confiding, like, hey, my friend, like, we used to be really close and now they did this and I just don't know how to feel. That's different. They're asking you, like, how to approach a problem, asking you for advice. But if they're just shit talking someone who they're really close with, like, they tell everything to, they used to do everything with, they still act like they're really close friends. Those are people you cannot trust, and that's not something that you should be doing either, because you need to respect the fact that these are your close friends, and it just says a lot about your character. And people will often realize that you're not someone who they should be close friends with. So just kind of ask for advice, but don't necessarily put them in a really bad light until they did something like genuinely horrible. But in this case, it's just someone who you think kind of just drains your energy, or it's not just akin with your personality. Number two, you're an introverted person and you understandably need some alone time. Like I said, especially if you're around a lot of people, how do you tell your friends nicely, or even family? Number one is like, be nice. A lot of people just don't know what you're thinking. So when you say something, think about what you will say and how it may actually come across to the other person. Especially if you're someone who isn't attuned to tones. Like if you realize that maybe you don't really pick up things, social cues as much as often as the other person, or there's something you just know, work on that in this scenario. Make sure that you ask someone about this. Make sure that you kind of Google, do your research. Know that if you want to stay friends with these people, you also have to learn how to speak their languages and their tones. And as for families, this is really like a lot harder, and it might take a few more times than you needed, and you really might have to use school or work as a disguise. I know it's like to like explain something, but everyone takes it as an attack or argument. So if you have to say you're studying or just like changing your clothes or just kind of like showering, resting, just to have some alone time, you do you. You certainly don't owe anyone your time, and everyone deserves to feel rested and safe. So that's kind of my advice on that topic. And a third example is you're in your friend group or like working, whatever, and there are just people like there's just one or few people you find entertaining. Maybe you can stand them, maybe you cannot. Like, how do you approach this? First thing is think about how bad their impact is. And this is key because we as people usually over dramatize things and overreact to things. And we usually later on realize that we probably should have had a calmer reaction. So ask yourself, are they really truly hurting my mental health and insulting me, or are they just people you dislike? Because you will dislike people. Like that's common. Like that's not new. That's not some new theory on TikTok. That's not different. You will dislike people. That's how it is. So you really have to learn how to be around people you don't like. And of course you don't have to go to every hangout or talk all the time. Like I know FOMO is really big, but genuinely, if these people are just people you don't like, you don't have to be around them. You can always hang out with those people that you do like separately. Like that's just how it is. So you can always distance yourself and be happy being by yourselves at times. People who constantly put themselves in situations where they just feel drained or just like really empty after a hangout are people who don't understand that they need alone time. Like maybe they do understand, they just don't know how to do it. Like you need to go back, take a step back, you like journal, you need to talk to a video about it, you need to talk about it out loud, not even to someone, you need to talk about it to like yourself in video, and just kind of go over what you're feeling and how you think that, why you think you're feeling like that. Do you think like you are feeling left out of everything because when you were growing, or like when you were older, people kind of left you out of things, or you just couldn't work, you couldn't hang out with people because of your family, whatever? Like think about where this issue like roots from, and think about how you can fix that. Like take yourself out on dates, go places, go do things yourself, go ask people to hang out separately. Like you're just always waiting for an invite, but you should be going out and inviting people to hang out with you. Ask your friend over to come over for a movie, go place for brunch. Like take it in your hands, grasp it with two hands, because if you don't, it's never gonna go your way. So like you have to be happy with yourself, because you just can't like expect your friends to drop people just because you dislike them. If they're like actual problematic and like horrible people to be around, then that's like different. But as humans, like I said, we don't mesh with everyone. Clashes are to be expected. So like different people are gonna be different people. Like you have to just have to find other people to hang around. And if you're like in a college setting or in a school setting, that might be a bit easier, just depending on like your school size or just stuff like that. But I understand like if you are someone who's older and you don't really have these social groups anymore as much as you used to when you're younger, so you really don't want to like drop your friends just because of this, or you just don't want to like it's harder to find other people. Like I get that, but try finding people online that are in your area, kind of like friend dating kind of thing. Just try going to different events to meet people, maybe people who speak your language, people from your culture, a friend of a friend's, and just like kind of start talking to people online, like on Instagram, like, oh, you want to go for brunch? More times often than not, people who are like in your scenario are in your scenario. They are harder to find friends. They don't know who to like hang out with anymore. And just try. Like, of course, you won't find people. Why is there a fly here? Bruh. You won't find people on the first try, but like at least try. But like as I said, like if they're actually harassing you, then that's like different. Like you need to communicate with your friends. And I say this with everything in me. Be prepared. If your friends don't agree with you, take your side. Even if you're in the utmost right, even if they have done something truly horrible, but they don't agree with you, take your side, you cannot control what other people choose to believe and say. I'm saying you cannot control what other people will believe or say. Like what they choose to believe and say is out of your control, and the only thing you can control is how much you will withstand to be around them. Like how much will you tolerate before you realize that your dignity is gone, before your self-respect is gone? How much can you tolerate from people who don't even care about you? That's the question you need to ask yourself, because that's what's important. That's what you can't control. Can't. Yes. So set boundaries for yourself, because at the end of the day, no one has your best interest in their mind as much as you. No one else really cares about you as much as you. That's just it. No matter what you think, no matter how much over you think, the only person who you can be so 100% sure that they like you is you. So don't be looking for other, like, I know it's hard to be like, of course, I want my friend's validation, my partner's validation, but their validation should not come before yours. That's just what it is. You can ask their validation, that's fine. You want to know if your friend likes your outfit, you want to know if your partner thinks you look pretty on your date, that's fine, nothing wrong about that. But if you let their validation and their opinion bring you so low that you can't even think of giving yourself validation, that's when you really start setting boundaries. So, moving on to boundaries with ourselves, that's really one of the biggest boundaries we seem to lack and forget about, is the ones with ourselves, because we either work ourselves too hard or just not at all. And that's where you're lacking discipline, which is why you also need boundaries to help your discipline. So, kind of ask yourself, do you push yourself too much? Are you the opposite? Are you not motivating or reaching your full potential? These are all things that you really need to think about, write about, and reflect on. I want that on a shirt. Not really. I would never wear shit that says that, but hypothetically, I would. So, just like ask yourself, like, okay, I don't know if you know this, but like on my TikTok, I've been getting like all these shadow work journal ads. Someone is spending like literally a fortune, because every time I scroll, every 2 TikToks, I see an ad about shadow work journal. And I'm like, what is this even about? And I really didn't check because I really didn't care. But I posted a TikTok on like questions to ask yourself when setting boundaries. See, I would open it, but my phone is recording. So I can link down the reel or TikTok down below, and then you guys can like kind of ask yourself the questions. It's kind of like, what do you see that you need to change in your life? What are things or people that are really affecting you that they shouldn't be affecting you? What are you doing that's stopping you from reaching your full potential? And I want you to be honest with yourself, because literally no one's gonna read this. Burn it. I don't care. Just, well, if you're gonna be honest, at least do it yourself. Like, you might be a compulsive liar, but you're really gonna do that to yourself now? That's crazy. That's crazy. Anyways, so boundaries with yourself looks like stop comparing yourself with others. Literally, you're just hurting yourself. And I know it's like super hard to stop self-sabotaging, which is why you have to do it in small, small steps. For example, if you realize that you're like comparing yourself, that's a step. That's literally a step, because it's so hard to even know what we're doing. And then think about why. Why do you do this to yourself? Is it because when you're growing up, people, in your life do that's yourself? Did your mom always compare herself in the mirror to models? Did your dad always compare himself to maybe more successful people? Did both your parents compare you to your sibling, a cousin, a friend? Did they compare you to what they thought you would be? Think about why you all, like, your first thought is comparing yourself. Think about that. Because when you realize that you're doing it, that's the first step. Because it is so hard to be self-aware of some things because our whole life we're like, oh, this is normal. My mom has done this. My grandparents have done this. My friends have done this. My siblings have done this. So when I do, it's not that big of a deal. But it's a big deal. It's a big deal. So you need to also realize that people you compare yourself to, models, whatever, actresses, celebrities, they also compare themselves. And then no matter what, you can never be them. No matter how much you try, no matter how much of an impersonator you are, like, you can copy their hairstyle, their looks, their makeup, their style, whatever. But at the end of the day, you will never be them. And you are not them. Like, nothing you can do, you will never become another person. So might as well just become yourself. Like, you're trying so hard to do something that's not gonna happen. That's like embarrassing. Try hard to do something that you can actually do. And maybe you'll reach your full potential. So another step is tell yourself that people are different and also amazing in their own ways, because it's literally so true. Because sometimes I'm like, oh, my friend is so pretty, like, I wonder, like, I'm comparing myself, like, I'm self-aware, that's a step. But I also think about the fact that, like, I saw this on a Tumblr quote somewhere, cringe alert, don't blame me, that, like, sunsets are pretty and, like, so are flowers. Like, do you ever look at sunset and bro, like, oh, bro, that bitch ugly? Mr. Lanier, if you're listening to this, I am so sorry, but there will be cursing in this episode. So if your kids are in the car, stop the episode right now. Stop. Thank you. I'll give you a short recap if you really want one. Anyways, so, like, you don't look at the flowers and go, okay, some of them are kind of ugly, but most of them you're like, oh, the flowers are so pretty. Like, I like the roses. It's so beautiful. Like, I like the colors. Like, the only thing sunsets and flowers have in common are, like, they're colorful. The only thing you and another person have in common is that you guys are both human. You see what I'm saying now? Fairy lights are pretty. You're pretty. Just Riz. What can I say? So you really need to, like, be aware of the fact that you are not like other people. You are different. You're not like them. So you will never be them. And the sooner you realize the fact that, yeah, that person looks better, a person has clearer skin, a person's skinnier, a person has better hair. Okay, and what's your point? Like, you spent all these years hating yourself. Maybe if you loved yourself for a month with no hate, you could do something, bro. You could do something big.